Welcome to the Jongets Games teaser for Rise of the Gnomes. In this video, I'll be giving you a brief overview of what the game is like to play, and if you'd like to learn the detailed rules for the game, then please check out the tutorial that I made for it, and you can find a link to that in the description of this video. Now, Rise of the Gnomes is a 1 to 5 player game that takes between 60 and 150 minutes to play, and it can be played in a cooperative mode where everyone wins or loses together, or in a competitive mode where everyone is fighting against each other, but in either of these modes, you are always fighting against the gnomes. Now, in this game, you are trying to build out a beer making empire, and so are those pesky gnomes. The way we all do this is by holding beer festivals as well as competitions in order to bring customers for our specific types of beer into a variety of different territories. And if you have the most control points in that area with those customers, you can actually build a brewery there, which will increase your beer production as well as your victory point or coin income at certain points during the game. Now, as all of this is happening, you are either working together or against each other using a worker placement mechanism where you send your brewers out to certain action spots that can be used immediately or other action spots that will be executed in a specific order that is randomized in each of the rounds. Now, as the game goes on, the gnomes will also be expanding their own beer making empire, and that is controlled by a deck of cards. Now, in addition to the gnomes expanding, there is also a looming threat of Gloom Tail the sea dragon. At a certain point, Gloom Tail will show up and start to move across the landscape, rampaging the regions where they end up in. Now, if you don't want your breweries and customers to be destroyed by Gloom Tail, you will have to pay a certain bribery amount, so it's important to have coins around to actually pay that off so that you don't lose that infrastructure and your footing in the game. Now, the way this game feels to play in the competitive mode is you are constantly trying to weigh your options. Do you immediately perform an action to do the thing that you want to do, but it's going to cost you precious coins, or do you instead spend beer, which is easier to get, in order to do that action later on? Now, with the action cards, they are executed in a specific order, so you also need to consider what actions have you decided to do earlier than the action you want to do now, and what can your opponents do, and what have they already committed to trying to do. So you're trying to take control of these areas and not be caught flat-footed as your opponent potentially moves their customers into an area with a big beer competition or festival, which could knock your plans out as you're trying to build a brewery but no longer can. So you're trying to keep all of this in mind while also keeping those gnomes in check, because at the end of the game, if the gnomes have the most victory points, then they will be the winner and none of the players will actually win the game. Now, in the cooperative mode, players are working together with this worker placement mechanic, trying to beat back those gnomes to overcome the rising gnome threat. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this overview, if you'd like to learn the details for how all of this works in the competitive mode, then please check out the tutorial that I made for it, and you can find a link to that in the description of this video.